Hello and welcome back to another Farm Sim 15 Giants Editor tutorial, and today I want to have a look at something a little different, which will be kind of a continuation from my gas station extended video. If you haven't watched that, probably it might be an idea to do so, because the two items will work together if you like. So what I want to do here is try and create some sort of biofuel center so that I can create my own fuel. Now, there are a couple of different versions out there. I have one on my desktop here, which is the UPK small biofuel refinery. I'll just open that in Giants Editor and I'll show you what I mean by that. Basically, this is a UPK Placeable mod. Works perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. Very good mod, as all the Universal Process Kit mods are. The only downside is that, in my experience at least, I have had nothing but trouble when it comes to importing Universal Process Kit or the UPK mods into a map through Giants Editor. So what I want to do here is basically take some parts from various different mods, probably including this one, and then make my own. So what I want to do here is I'm going to just leave that open for now, and I'm also then going to work with the American Farms map. This is version 4, and the reason why I'm going to work with this particular map is because, well, the work's already done for me in a sense. The creator of this particular map, and this comes from American Eagle Modding, I will try to remember to put a download link in the description. A very good map, somewhat open and flat. There are some areas which are a little bit sort of up and downy, but for the most part it's relatively flat. But it's a very good map. It's got some different bits and pieces on it. I have made some various changes to it in the past by adding in greenhouses and blah blah, all sorts of different things. But you know, it's got hemp on it, cotton, and some other bits and pieces. Oh, and carrots as well, if you're into that sort of thing. And you've got all your fat and mods and whatever else. But what we're going to be looking at here today is the actual biofuel center. So if I come over to here, you can see we have the biofuel center. The future is here. So what I want to do here is take some parts from this particular map and then adapt them to work for me. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I suppose fortunately, in my case, this is giving me the opportunity to have a bit of a play around and create something. Even though, as I said, most of the work is done for me, it will give me the opportunity to have a bit more of a play around with various different buildings and trying to build something of my own, which hopefully you can get something from and maybe have a go at it yourself. Now, what I mean by unfortunately, in the previous section of what I said, the biofuel center here is set up as a complete unit. So if I actually click on the main body of the mod, and if we look in the cinegraph here, it actually does say body, but it's incorporated into this shell_BGA plant transform group, which is the entire thing really. And I obviously don't want all of that. What I want to be able to do is create something here that is somewhat smaller so that it can be put into other types of maps, perhaps maybe your smaller British maps like Thornton Farm and Nayswell and some others maybe. But yeah, so what I want to do is take some parts from here and then work with that to build my own setup. So I don't really want all of that in its entirety. So what I want to do here is just highlight a certain part of it so that I can find the main mod itself, because the rest of it really is just aesthetics. It's just there for looks to make it, you know, a complete unit if you like. But the actual mod itself is under this transform group, fuel production _01, and that's the part that does all the work. That's the part that actually takes your grain and water in this particular case, but you could adjust that if you wanted to maybe fertilizer or whatever you want to put in there, seeds or whatever. But the actual main mod itself, the parts that do all the work, this is what it's made up of, and there are some parts buried under the map as well, which I will have to have a play around with to incorporate them into whatever I decide to build. But I think that this is quite a good setup, so I'm going to go with it. I believe, from what I can understand, this is actually a type of conversion, or the mod has been based around the mix station, where you put in your what do you put in there? Your wheat windrow, your barley windrow if you want to, or whatever it's been set up, and then your hay or grass, and then your silage to create TMR. Well, in this particular case, the mod has been adjusted to take, well, like I say, on this particular map, hemp, corn and water, and from that you then get biofuel or diesel fuel. What I want to do though is change that. I want to change it from hemp to canola because I want to have it somewhat set up around a basic map structure, so that if you were working on a map that didn't have hemp, for example, then you would still be able to use this process. And I'm hopefully going to be able to demonstrate how we go about doing that. I'm going to make a few more changes with it because I don't want it to be as big as this. So hopefully once I get it exported and start to build it, then I will be able to incorporate the triggers so that instead of having 3 separate grain stations here, we will have only just the one with the 3 triggers built into that one grain station setup, if you like, this corrugated or whatever you want to call this part here. So what I'm going to do now is, just with it highlighted in the cinnagraph, I'm going to come over to my attributes here on the right hand side, and in the name section here I'm going to double click that so that it highlights it, and then I'm going to Control C to copy that, and then what I want to do is export this out like I said. So I'm going to go into File, Export Selection with Files, and I'm going to go back to my desktop here, and what I want to do here, or what I need to do, is create a new folder, and then I'm going to paste that name in there. Then I'm going to open that folder and create another new folder and paste that in. Then I'm going to open that one up, paste in my name in the file name here, and save that. Now what I will show you here, the reason why I actually created a folder within a folder, because when I open it up you will see that it has actually added another folder in for me separate to the other parts, because that is what contains the scroll UV shader.xml. And if you don't do it that way, when you actually export it without, just by creating the single folder without creating the second folder, you will then have another folder. This vehicles folder will be on your desktop separate, and it won't be structured in the correct way. So then when you try to import it, things won't work quite as well as they're meant to. So just be aware of that if you choose to follow along using the same setup as I am. Okay, so now that I've got that into there, I'm just going to have a look within this particular mod, because down here we have this transform group called production, and this is the part that has all of the attributes, the user attributes, and all the bits that join it all together, and most importantly the actual script that I need to make it all work. So if we come down to the onCreate user attribute and I look across in here, we have mod onCreate.biofuel onCreate. This is the script that I will need to bring over into whatever map I choose to put it into. I'm probably thinking more along the lines of Thornton Farm, but that may change depending on whether I find something else to play around with, but we'll see how that works. So that's the script that I'm going to be looking forward to bring over, plus a few other things from the mod desk, just so that all the text shows up correctly and everything else. But we'll work through that as we go along. So I don't particularly need this map open anymore, because there's nothing else on here that I can actually take, I don't believe, because I think, if I remember rightly, all of these buildings, well, that one is actually separated. What's that? Don't know if I really want that building. Maybe that might be of some use to me actually. Could actually take that building. Might be worth taking that building. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to actually highlight that again in the cinnagraph. I'm going to double click on the name in my attributes on the right hand side. Control C to copy that name. I'm going to go File, Export Selection with Files, and then in I think I'm going to create a new folder again. So what I'm going to go and do here is back to my desktop, new folder, paste that in, open that folder up, paste in the file name and save. That way it keeps it somewhat separate from the main body of the mod, and I can adapt it and work with it without actually messing up that too much in any way possible. So I'm going to go with that for now. Those are the same buildings. I can always make copies of those if I need to. I think that's going to be part of the main mods. There's nothing there that I can copy across separately. So I think for now what I'm going to do is actually leave the rest of it, because there's nothing else there that's really going to be of much use to me. So I'm going to leave that alone now. I don't want any of that. So I can now close this particular map down because there's nothing there that I need for now. But I will require going back into that folder to take, as I say, the script and also the parts from the mod desk to bring over into the map that I'm going to be importing it into. But first of all, I need to build my structure, build my actual biofuel factory, if you like, within Giant Editor. So I'm just going to come into here. What I'm thinking here is I'm just going to take one of these biofuel containers here. Might take one of those. I don't know yet. We'll see how that works out. But I'm going to take one of those from there. So what I want to do here is, again, with it highlighted in the cinegraph here, tank, I'm going to double click the name in my attributes here, Control C to copy that, then File, Export Selection with Files, back to my desktop, create a new folder, paste that in, double click to open the folder, paste in my file name and save. So now I have a couple of different things that I can bring into my mod and build it up from there. So let's just see if I can actually take one of these without doing too much damage anywhere else. Yep, that's fine. So I'm going to take one of those as well. May not use it, don't know yet. Might be preferable to use one of those smaller ones, but I'm going to just basically work with that for now. So we'll take that as well while I'm here. So again, I'm going to come over to my attributes, double click on the name, copy that with Control C, File, Export Selection with Files, back to my desktop, create my new folder, paste it in, open the folder, paste in my file name, and then save. And then what I will do is take one of these smaller ones as well, just so that I know I can, oh I see, it is a bigger one, but they've just changed it, they've scaled it down, so I don't need that because I can always make a copy of this one if I so choose to, and then scale that instead. So I'm going to leave that alone, don't need anything else there. Okay, so that's fine. Right, so I'm going to leave that open for now, because I may take some more parts from there. Actually, what I will do is I'm going to take this, the actual base plate. Now, when you actually create something like this, like I'm doing here today, it is quite nice to have a base plate of some kind, even though it calls it baton, however you pronounce that. Some sort of base plate, ground plate, whatever you want to call it, to place everything onto so that it keeps it, you can identify where it's all being put down on the actual structure of the mod, and then later on, once you actually have it built, if you choose to, you can then delete that, or perhaps maybe bury it under the map that you're going to be importing into, or it will give you something there to guide the actual mod onto a particular map, just to keep the structure of it all intact. So it can be somewhat beneficial to have some sort of base plate there. So I'm going to again double click the name in the the attributes on the right hand side here. So I'm going to go Control C to copy that. Again, File, Export Selection with Files, back to the desktop, create my new folder, paste it in, open the folder, paste in my file name down here, and then save. So for now, I think what I'm going to do is just minimize that. Then in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into, yeah, that'll be fine, the Models Objects folder there, and I need to copy over all of these items. What I might do is just move them, so I'm just going to move all of those into there like so, because obviously this is my fuel production one folder I'm in. So now that I've got that all into there, what I can do is come back to the main folder, double click that and open that in Giant Editor. Now I'm using 6.0.5. If you are using or playing FarmSim 17 and you have the later version of Giant Editor, do not open these mods in the 7.02 or 7.00. Always use up to and including 6.0.5 or 6.0.3, simply because if you open the mod in the later versions that are designed for FarmSim 17, it will try to convert the mod to work with the textures, packages and everything else relevant for FarmSim 17, and it will then break the mod, and it will not work within FarmSim 15. So I'd recommend that you use 6.0.5 to work with anything that you're going to be making or adapting or whatever else for FarmSim 15. That way you should have no problems. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that one, click OK, and then open that in that particular version of Giant Serta like so. So I'm going to highlight it in the Cinegraph, press F on my keyboard to zoom to it. There we go, perfect. So now what I need to do though is bring in a couple of things. So what I want to do here is go File, Import. I'm going to go back to my desktop, back into Fuel Production _01 folder. And then again in the Fuel Production _01 models, objects, and I have my parts that I exported from various different places, and then I'm going to import them now into here. So first one I'm going to start with is the baton, however you say that, and I'm going to double click that, and that will bring that into somewhere. There it is, just there, but obviously I want it over here, so I'm going to go edit, interactive placement. Did it bring it over? No. Edit, interactive, but it may not do this because it's not got anything to actually interact with, so it may not work with the interactive function because I'm not placing it against any main body, it's just an empty space underneath. So the interactive placement tool is great, but it doesn't function when you're just clicking on an open space like I am here. But that's fine, because what I want to do here is actually move this from there and put it in within the main transform group, because when you actually finish this off and then import it into a map, if you don't include it within the main transform group, when you click on it, it won't select it, as you can see here. So you would have to move it separately to everything else. So quite important that you put it in with the main transform group. So with the baton, or however you pronounce that, I may even rename that actually. Let's call that base. There we go, that's better, I can say that better. So base, I'm going to Control X to cut it and it will disappear. I'm going to click on the Fuel Production 01 main transform group here, Control V to paste it in, and there it is on the bottom there. So now if I click this main transform group, it is highlighted with everything else, so it will move with everything else. So that's perfect, exactly what I want. So now what I need to do though is obviously move it up to the right place. So if I click that separately to everything else, and then move that into position. Maybe a little bit higher, if it will, without freaking out. There, that's fine, that'll be fine. Somewhere like that will be okay, that's okay. Right, so now that I've got that into there like so, don't need it to be quite as big as that because I will be removing certain functions here. So I'm just going to bring it across like so, then bring it across like so. Not sure. May have to experiment and play around with that a little bit as we go. Might need to come back over this way a bit. Okay, so now what I want to do here is, as you can see, we've got 3 separate grain station triggers here, the actual main sections, which I believe in the Cinegraph are called grain station. There we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3. This first one here would be on the American Farms map is for hemp, and then we have this one which is for corn, and then this one over here for water. But this one I want to change to canola, and then I'm going to keep this one as corn and this one as water. So I'm going to change the one, but I just think that that would be better for if you're playing on a standard fruit type map, then this would still be functional. If you were using a multi-fruit modded map perhaps, and it had hemp on it, or even sunflowers or something like that, then you could adapt that to perhaps maybe use different types of different fruit types. You may even wish to adapt this so that it doesn't take water it takes fertilizer. However you wish to do that, but I will show you what I'm going to do later on by changing some of these user attributes for the types of the fruit types I'm going to be using, and then you can change those to whichever one you want to go with. So again, I'm going to click on the base plate here because it's a little bit too thick, a bit too fat. So let's try this one, 0.5. No, that's the wrong one. So let's do that one. Might be this one, 0.5. No, that's not the right one. Sometimes because the gizmo is upside down here, the attributes, the scale XYZ attributes are all back to front. So sometimes it can be a bit fiddly to play around with them. What I could do is actually rotate this round like so. So if I do 90, now the actual gizmo is the right way up. Shouldn't matter, I don't know. We will see once we get the actual main thing built up and start putting it on a map if that's completely screwed it up or not, but it shouldn't have done, so hopefully that will be the case. Right, so now that I've done that, again I'm going to scale this, so 0.5, no, well, still Z, I think, 0.5, yeah, that's fine, that doesn't matter. Let's do 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, there we go. 0.1 is fine, there we go, that's better. Not quite so thick. And then we'll just bring this down a little bit. Like so, there we go, perfect. That looks pretty good, at least so far anyway. Right, so now that I've got that there, so what I want to do now though, is I've got some extra triggers over here. So let's see what we've got here. Type 2, type 1. Yeah, so what I want to do here then is actually move these and bring them over to this grain station here so that I can delete the other one because I don't want that one. I don't want all of these different types of grain stations here. I want to make this somewhat smaller than it is now. So I'm going to bring this over to here somewhere. Don't want them to be quite as close as that, but I want to be able to see them quite clearly, but don't want them all overlapping and whatever else. So I'm just going to move that one perhaps maybe to there somewhere, and if I actually open this up, go into the tip trigger, I can move that as a separate entity, so that's fine. So we'll just line this up somewhat, and then it's important that we get the start position and the end position in the right place. So just going to move that somewhere like that, and then we'll move this one. You may need to experiment with this a little bit once you get it into the map. May need to come back out and move some of these points around a little bit just so that they all line up properly and do actually work. But for the most part, I think that's pretty good. That will do. I'm just going to perhaps maybe move that one back just a little bit like that. So start, end, tip trigger. Okay, so I think that one's okay. So I go to this one and this one. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is then move this last one over here. So I'm going to do that. Oops. Now the way that this particular mod is set up, at least to my understanding, I have to do it this particular way because each one of these tip triggers has separate user attributes doing various different things, because you can see here that this one has a mix factor of 0.4, whereas this one has a mix factor of 2, and this one has a mix factor of 1. Sorry, mix factor of 1, so mix factor of 1, so that one's slightly different, but this one's type 1, type 2, and type 3. And if you actually then come into the XML, these will all match up to certain parameters within the actual XML. So if I was to perhaps, for instance, delete these two and make a copy of this one, which would have been much easier, and then just change the fruit type from water to canola, or in this particular case it would be rape and then maize for corn, it would get really confused because the actual type and the mix factor and everything else wouldn't match up. So it's quite important that you do it in this particular fashion, even though it is a bit of a pain. In the long run it will benefit. So just going to bring that into there like so. I think that's pretty good. I'll just open this up, bring the tip trigger somewhere into position here like so, and then we'll bring in our start point like so, and our end point. Now these start and end points are more important for AI, your actual hired workers, because if you don't get them in the right place, when your hired worker comes in, if you actually put them in the wrong place, what can happen is, for example, if you were to put your start all the way out here, your hired worker would hit that and potentially start tipping too early. Perhaps maybe not that far out, because they still need to be in the actual tip trigger itself, because that's what has the collision and the trigger itself. But the if the tractor hits the trigger, the tip trigger, but the trailer's out here where this start would be out here somewhere, it potentially, because the tractor's hit the trigger, you may find that the trailer might start dumping all the way out there instead of actually where it's meant to be. So again, like I said, you may need to come back in and have a play around with this and move some of these start and end triggers around a little bit just to get them to play ball. Let's bring that down a little bit. It's a bit too high. I don't want to bury it under the map, but I don't want it all the way up in the sky either. Okay, well, we'll work with that for now. Hopefully that will be fine. So next thing I want to do here is I want to bring in building of some description. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to click on these grain stations, if I can find them. Grain station, grain station. Now what I want to do here is I don't want to remove them. Do I want to remove them? No, I don't want to remove them. I'm not going to remove them for now. So what I want to do here is basically just bring them across. And then what I'm going to do is actually bury them slightly. So if we find this one, bring that across and bury it. And then we have a fill plane here. So tip marker, silage plane. So again with the silage plane, I'm going to bring that across and bury it. This is again a good reason why you have a base plate, because it puts everything in a position where you can kind of put it underneath the map. So that's it for part 1 of this video tutorial on how to go about building a biofuel factory. So what I'm going to do now is basically, as I say, end this video here now, and then we'll pick this up in part 2, where we continue on adding parts into this build, and hopefully you'll join me. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on part 2.